Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome inside the neighborhood. I'm your host, Brandon Wood. Today we have a special guest, my brother, JC Barnett. Welcome inside the neighborhood.
Thank you, brother. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
Yes, sir.
So, man, I know I'm looking forward to, I know we've been familiar with each other, but hopefully I think I'll probably learn some more stuff, So I want to just give you a chance just to kind of share who you are, just maybe a general start from the beginning. Who is JC Barnett?
Man, JC Barnett is a lot of different people. First of all, I would give glory to God for just even being able to be present here, to live life and wake up every day in a joyful spirit. But who am I? First and foremost, I'm a child of God. I'm a husband. I'm a father to 4 kids. And I'm just enjoying living life in that process every day. Outside of that, from a professional standpoint, I'm newly the director of the Carver Community Center. I've been there several months now, and truly just being able to be me and who I am from an artistic standpoint, and be able to follow through with some of the thoughts and ideas and engage in some of the relationships that I've always had, and then embracing new ones in that space. Speaking of the artistic standpoint, I'm an artist, whether that's putting paint to canvas.
That's one thing I never really knew until as of late.
Yeah. I mean, that was as far back as the age of 7 years old.
Wow.
And I can kind of go into that story here in just
we'll
a little bit. But yeah, from an artist standpoint, that's kind of how, as a matter of fact, June 29th on Saturday is my birthday.
Okay.
It's my 39th birthday. And it's just really such a beautiful place to be and to come into that age. I'm really just, and you can identify with this, really just starting to figure out who I am and to embrace who I am, be comfortable in my skin, and to live and pursue every day from that place. So it's really just an awesome
it's a great
thing.
place. Yeah. So kind of, I want to see like, where did all this originate from, as far as like your household, your family life, and like just the household you were raised in. So kind of maybe share, your family dynamics and just the house you were raised in.
Absolutely, man. I came up in a household with 2 loving parents, 2 sisters that my closest sister is 8 years older than me. So Ebony is the oldest, Stephanie is the closest. And then I actually have a brother that not many people until recently knew that I had. He grew up with his mom in Ohio. Well, he traveled all over the country, but grew up with his mom mainly in Ohio. And so, my sibling relationships are beautiful, always have been. My story and how I kind of shaped into the person I am today, not many people know that my parents were divorced for 6.5 years. And in some of the most crucial time frame really in my life. So from the age of 10 to the age of 16 and a half, my parents were divorced.
Wow.
You learn a lot of things from age 10 to the age of 16 and a half. And, in some good ways, in some bad ways. But one thing always remained, and I respect my parents a tremendous amount, is that also from the age of 10, I was really kind of like the only child, because again, my closest sister was 8 years older than me. So when I was going into the 4th grade, she graduated high school. But they always put me first. They always showed me love, and they always interacted with one another in a manner that was very respectable and cordial. And I learned a tremendous amount from them from that perspective, and what relationship would look like, what relationship with God looks like. And so it's still to this day, tremendous amount of respect for them. So that kind of shaped my early years. And so when they got remarried and had to worked on their relationship, that again set a groundwork for who I wanted to be as a man, as a father, and how I pursued my professional life. I want to add just a little bit more to that. In reference to me being a father, I knew that I wanted to be a father since probably between the age of 7 and 10.
Wow. What made you know that?
I don't know. It's something in my spirit.
Yeah.
It was something that the nurturing caring, loving spirit that first I believe originates from the Lord. I believe I'm thankful that he has blessed me with that feeling to want to give that to my own kids one day. So I knew from that age that one day I was going to be a dad, that I was one day was going to be a husband, and to do the best I could to provide for them.
So you were aware you had that feeling inside you, that spirit inside you. Can you pinpoint any ways that was kind of nourished by your parents and by your household?
Absolutely, man. I think that, first of all, it kind of gives me an opportunity to go into who each of my parents are.
Please. Yeah.
My mother.
Your dad coached me a little bit, so.
Yeah. So my dad is a different animal, and I'll speak on him just a moment. But my mother has always been very kind, very sweet. Now, if you let her tell her story, my mother came up. It's her story to tell, but I'll give you a little bit of it. She came up dirt poor. She's biracial. My grandmother was white. My grandfather was a dark-skinned black man who passed away when she was the age of 6. And so she came up around 5 other brothers who kind of had to nurture her. She was the only girl. And so she had a mother who worked very hard to provide for them, but also was in a situation that had to leave her amongst her brothers. So when she came up with some insecurities about herself that only the Lord, it only could be relationship with the Lord for her to be who she was to me. Otherwise, I myself might be a little bit different. But she was very nurturing. She was very loving, a very caring individual.
From Kokomo?
Born and raised in Kokomo.
Okay.
And I always try to say it this way, and I might kind of mess it up this time around, but she is the reason. She, a lot of times, is the reason for the advancement of my thought process. So and she may not even know this or know that she receives credit for this, but my next thought and my ability to think ahead and think more critically comes from her. Whether it's a conversation that we've had before, whether it's a book she's introduced me to, or just, something, engaging in conversation with something that I had never thought about thinking of it at a certain perspective before. So I appreciate her so much for that.
That's great. That's great. What about Pops?
My dad, on the other hand, my dad has always been very much like that as well. I think, without him ever having said it, I truly believe that he is the kind of individual who knew very early on that he wanted to be a dad as well. Again, his story to tell, but he came up in a household where his dad struggled with a vice, and but had a loving and nurturing mom who was always present. Now, let me go back on that. My grandfather ended up always being the kind of person that I will remember as being an amazing grandfather. He was an amazing grandfather to me, but I can't always say that he might have been that for his children, dad for his children. And so that's a story from my pops. But my dad, he has always been a nurturing person. I followed his footsteps everywhere he went. He could tell you, even in a house, I was going up the stairs with him, I was going down the stairs, and I was laying on his leg on the couch watching a TV program. And he embraced it, accepted that. He never was the kind who shied away from affection. And so I'm now that for my kids.
Same with my parents.
But you know him in the arena of sports. As a basketball coach, and more so as a football coach, he is a high energy, high volume guy who, first and foremost, loves kids, loves working with the youth. He was a power football coach for more than 20 years. And he was blessed enough to be able to follow me through the ranks all the way up through high school. And, but man, powerful example. That's really the word that I like to use for him a lot, because a lot of the things that I do as a man, as a father, and just as a man of God, he has shown me by example. And great man.
That's great. So just to pick a little part of that, I want to speak about like that relationship of like son to father, as far as like that affection and that nurturing aspect.
Yeah.
You know, maybe share a little bit on that, you know, just your perspective on that, as far as you shared a little bit about what you've experienced, but just your thoughts on that. You know, I know that's important. That's something that I had, you know, from my parents, is just that love, that affection, you know, nurturing, you know. So maybe share your thoughts on that, and just the importance of, you know, us as men being aware of our emotions and able to share and be affectionate.
First, let me say this. Your mother and your father have always been some of the most respectful people and individuals and respectable individuals that I've ever met. And anytime I see them, I can gain a greater understanding of how you've become who you've become. More so who you are, because I always see the individual first. More so who you are as an individual and how you treat people, but also how that is in relationship to what you've been able to achieve from a professional standpoint. I mean, those things are so closely and go hand in hand. And so I know how powerful of examples your parents have been to you. But man, again, I think that stems first from a relationship with the Lord. But I truly believe that we have to, as men, young Black men, who are examples of fathers and community leaders, we have to stop. This isn't really the word that I want to use, but it kind of does match. Over sexualizing and stigmatizing Black girls and Black boys and Black fathers for their sons. That doesn't, you being affectionate and hugging your son and giving him a kiss on the forehead means nothing more than that you love them. And I feel like there's been a perversion attached to those actions that I would like to break down the barriers. Anytime you see me, the first time I see my son for the day, I'm gonna embrace him with a big hug. I'm gonna give him a kiss. I might give him several on top of his head. That's just how I show love to my son.
My pops still do that.
Exactly. And you feel that, and you know, and even if you don't show it the same way to other people, that transfer of love to you from your pops is a transfer of love that you can now show to other individuals elsewhere. Now, that's not appropriate for every person that you come in contact with, but that is the same kind of love and affection that you feel inside, that you feel from your dad, you're able to show to another human being. That could be life-changing. I mean, it is life-changing. And so can you kind of give me a bigger, broader picture of what that relationship looked like between you and your parents?
For me, I would say I appreciate you sharing, you know, the example that, you know, how they've carried themselves, you know, because they've had excuse my language, a hell of a journey, both of them, you know, and their lives have been tough, you know, for situations that they had no control of, or situations that they put themselves in. But for me, just my parents, you know, I don't know if they're necessarily meant to be together, you know. I think I know they pretty much stay together for me and my sister, you know. But one thing I always notice is, like, you know, they would get into it and carry on and this and that, you know. But one thing I always, like, as I reflect back, like, they would always end up kind of making amends and coming back together, you know. And I'd see them, you know, sitting on the couch together, you know. So that's one thing I took away, just as far as like witnessing their relationship, you know, because they probably think they, you know, probably a detriment to us and all that, you know. But you know, they were amazing parents. But for me, like, just you know, like you said, just them hugs from my dad, and you know, just a kiss on the forehead, and just I think it just allowed me to be more vulnerable, you know, and be more emotional, you know, and be you know, just more open to be myself, you know, and not you know, feel any certain way about, you know, showing love. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what it comes down to, is just like being able to show love and express love. And you can kind of notice and see the people who didn't have that experience, you know? So that's it's a thin line, but it's a big divide.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely, man. That's powerful.
Yeah. So let's get into sports a little bit, you know? So, talk about your early childhood as far as sports, you know, what was your first sport that you played?
First sport that I played, and still my first love, is football.
Football. How old were you?
I was running around the Powell football field with my dad at the age of 5. And so I was carrying a football very early on in my life. And so I keep reflecting on how just good the Lord has been to me, because I was able to excel as a multi-sport athlete, as a football player coming up, as a basketball player coming up, and as a track athlete in high school, as far as high school. But when I think back to my early years, as far as sports is concerned, football will always really be that first love for me. It's a different feeling than being on the basketball court, but I can kind of relay that information. But there's nothing greater to me than feeling like seeing that line open up like the Red Sea, and nothing but green grass, and knowing that I have the ability to go from point A to point B with my speed and carry that
than
ball.
Everybody else.
And that's the beauty of and that's why I encourage kids to be multi-sport athletes, because I was not track fast, but I was football and basketball fast because I ran track. So I would get dusted on the track, but I come back the following year on the football season and be quick than a mug on the football field and be able to juke and cut and do all those things because I had developed that work ethic on the track. Kind of got off course there, but
you good?
Football for me engages people in a different manner. It's an opportunity to release some energy that I feel like is much needed. I used to love to hit people as well as love to get hit. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to anybody who never played football before, but it makes plenty of sense to me and a many football players.
Did you grow up physical? Like, were you a physical kid?
I've never been, I say this a lot, I've never been hard, but I've always been hard-nosed. I can take punishment and I can give punishment, and more so within the arena of football or within the sport. It's hard for me. Now, I can get with the program, and I don't want anybody to take this a certain way, but I can get with the program, but it will take a lot for me to engage in a fight with somebody, if that makes sense. It'll take me to very limits for somebody to get me to that point. That's my last line of defense. But again, I love that aggression piece, and I love that physicality that comes with that sport. And so I excelled. As a matter of fact, I went to college. My first year of college, played football at Anderson University. I did well there. I got to play some varsity time there. Decided that Anderson wasn't for me, and decided that I was going to come back home to IU Kokomo and finish my degree, a bachelor's degree in business.
Nice.
Basketball. Basketball is a great love for me as well. And people probably associate me more with basketball because of what I've been able to do with my program. And that's great. I love how I'm able to engage more throughout a greater time frame with basketball because it's an indoor and an outdoor sport. Football is hard to do indoors. So basketball, I can engage more individuals for a longer period of time. Basketball for me, I said this on a post the other day. Basketball for me, from an early age, I always wanted to have an impact on the game. Now, you've known me a long time. I'm not any taller than I was in high school, and not much taller than I was in middle school coming up playing sports. But I've always had the heart, and I worked hard at developing skills. So shooting the basketball for me gave me an opportunity to be a special part of the game that it's hard if you don't have that skill. It's hard for a lot of other individuals who are my stature for them to be able to do. I mean, literally, you're playing amongst the trees. I remember it was such a significant moment, an impactful moment for me. You guys, as a matter of fact, had just were playing in a regional game, I believe over in Marion against Muncie Central. I remember walking down on the floor after that and thinking, first of all, my heart was hurting from the loss. But I remember thinking, man, I played amongst these guys and everybody was here. And I just remember thinking like, Lord, I remember saying to myself, Lord, thank you for allowing me to be a special part of this game, because a lot of people don't get the opportunity to be and experience and play with people like Brandon Wood the way that I did. And it was from shooting a basketball. So let me share some stats real quick. Senior season, 39% from 3-point, 45% overall from field goal, 75% from the free throw line, which ain't great. But
that's about where I'm at for my career, probably. So
okay,
it's not great though. Should be better.
So that doesn't mean anything as far as you being able to be a special part of the game. I'm speaking to you young ones. But what it does mean is that if you work on it, then it gives you an opportunity. So yeah.
How do you think sports like contributed to your like creativity? You know, as far as like being able to like express yourself on the court with the moves and just create within the sport. So how do you think that applied from sports to just being a creative in general?
Every day I live my life as an artist. I have to find my artistic place in everything that I do, whether that's being executive director of Carver Community Center, to being a dad, to being an athlete. I never have felt restrictions or limits to how to achieve something. And so whether that's finding a place in an opening to pull up for my jump shot, going between the legs, crossing over behind or in front or behind the back and creating a space with a hop step to the side and pulling up for my jump shot, or just going and getting it, I'm using some level of creativity to find that place. And so
how do you think that helps like initiate ourselves to be able to just like express ourselves like authentically? You know, because as I'm realizing and reflecting, it's like a lot of my probably ability to be my full self and create and not have limits and not have fear, it just started from like being on the court and just feeling like, oh, like these dribbles, these shots, this movement is me just expressing myself, you know, and projecting myself. So how do you think that relates?
Well, the court for you, I know, because I've seen you play on so many occasions.
But even when it comes to like planning events, you know, that same spirit kicks in to where it's like, oh, okay, this fell through. I got to find a solution and do this. I got to create, I got to bring this together. I got to be resourceful here. It's like, so like it translates outside of sports, you know, so that's why I kind of want to see how's that applied to like your new position, you know?
Have to be flexible, have to be pliable, have to know how to utilize your relationships. If I don't have an answer to something, I know that there's somebody else that I know who does. And so
what gives you not to cut you off, what gives you the courage to reach out to them? Because a lot of people would be like, let me just try to figure it out, or like, you know, not like scared somebody's gonna let them down, you know? So how you feel about that?
And that's a great question.
It probably could have been worded different as a different topic, but if you don't mind sharing that.
No, everything to me, I find a way to relate it.
For sure.
Because I've never been such a manly man that I was afraid to go into a grocery store or a convenience store and ask for directions to how to get somewhere.
Not at all.
I just know that I need to get somewhere right now. And so
it's like your pride wasn't in the way.
No, and it never has been.
Yeah, never.
And I think that's something that has
Where's
to
that come from?
That has to come from a relationship with the Lord.
For sure.
Because if it was left up to me, I would mess up plenty. I mean, by no means am I a perfect individual, and you may have a similar testimony, but if it was just left up to me to have the answer to everything, I'd mess up a lot of stuff. And I'm thankful that I know that I can take it to the Lord, or I can take it to someone He's put me in relationship with that has the answer, because I don't have a lot of the answers. But looking at everything as if it's my canvas. Whether it's paint to a canvas, literally paint to a canvas, or it's me programming and coordinating an event. I can think about that thing in such a way that puts such a unique perspective, such a unique spin and experience to it, that it's not only joyful for myself, but I'm thinking about other people as well. So when I'm on the basketball court, well, let me first say that when I'm painting a canvas with paint, on a canvas with paint, I'm not only thinking about myself, it is mostly for me, but I'm also thinking, man, how will this give somebody else an experience? And for you as a professional basketball player, but the thought process that I have as well as being on the basketball court is, what would make that person go ooh and ah, you know, as well as be productive while giving them that show. So I got to make the bucket, but I would like to make it look nice too.
Yeah.
Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, man.
Yeah. So you got your business degree, you know, finishing up college, you know, what was that first step after you finished college?
Man, so when I finished college, I was actually 25. That would have been 2010. Humble start to my professional career, my job and professional career. And somebody said something to me one time I'll never forget. I won't mention who it was. But so my final years of college and my first year out of college, I was working as a cashier at Kroger. And there's so much dignity and pride to every job. But somebody walked through Kroger one day and said to me, this was a good friend of mine. I went to school, I played with him, I've been over to his house. He was that kind of friend. And he said, dude, what are you doing here? And the rest of that day, I was stunned, for lack of better terms.
Like asking yourself that?
I was asking myself, because if you asked me at the time, I was content in that space. But my level, my capacity to grow was greater than that space. Again, much dignity and pride in every job. But for me,
you didn't take offense to it. You took it like, let me really ask myself this.
Correct. And I did that. And so shortly after that, there was an opportunity to advance, but that wasn't the space that I needed to stay in as well. Although it was a learning experience, that was a factory setting, that was a learning experience. I needed to be there. I needed to experience that and grow and move on. And use the skills and the tools that I had developed within the academic setting. And so beyond that point, I got a job with the bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust. Beyond that point, I became a financial aid counselor and a VA certified official at IU Kokomo. And from that point, I am where I'm sitting today as executive director of Carver Community Center. I attribute all those things to the Lord ordering my footsteps. But I also encourage anybody who wants greater for themselves to continue to step outside of themselves and push themselves beyond their comfortability level. Because that's the only way that we achieve greater, not only for ourselves, but especially if we're growing and developing families. We have to be able to grow as the family grows as well, and be able to provide. It's not for anybody who isn't keeping up with the rapid rate the world is changing. You have to embrace the idea of growing with the world as well. Not living in the world. We should be living as spiritual beings, but growing with the world in a sense that the favor of the Lord is upon me first and foremost, and he's going to provide for me, but that takes some work and some effort on my end as well. And so I try to stay in that mind frame.
How do you think we keep that favor in our favor?
Oof. That's great. The word says that we have favor with God and with man. And so I know first and foremost, when I wake up in the morning, I need to be acknowledging the Most High. And from that relationship, I then know that I have favor with man. And let me use this as an example. Brother, I have known you for a long time and have always loved and appreciated who we were as far as friendship and relationship. But you don't have to have me here. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here and share my heart and share my life and share professional and friendship experiences with you. And the caliber of individuals that you've had on the show before have been high, and it will continue to grow and rise. And if you ask me, I'm a lowly individual who doesn't deserve much in life at all. But you have me here, and that's favor with man. And so I'm extremely thankful, first and foremost, for the positions the Lord has put me in to engage with special people. And for the favor that they've been able to show me in my lifetime. So starts with the Lord, and then showing the fruit and living in the fruits of the Spirit, kindness, gentleness, etc. That in turn allows me opportunities to do special things with people like you.
Yep. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Before we continue on to like bring us to present day, I want to kind of backtrack just because your involvement with the youth and the basketball circuit. So I want to see like, what was your upbringing as far as like kind of school ball with like summer ball and like kind of just with that circuit, you know, what was your experience with that?
I have a hopeful message in that, because although I did not play beyond high school basketball, I was able to experience a high level of high school basketball. I shared another post the other day. I was wrong in my message. I had a little piece that was wrong. I had to re-edit it. 2004. So just thinking back to the schedule of 2004, which was my senior year of high school, according
my
to
freshman year.
Your freshman year. I remember battling you in practice. And I knew back then you was a dog.
Right on.
But it was the 26th toughest schedule in the state of Indiana, according to some a publication. On that schedule included the North Centrals, the Lawrence Norths, the Carmels, etc. At least 3 of those individuals, should have been 4, and I'll include a 5th, which I'll get to in a moment, was on our schedule, and they were Mr. Basketballs. 3 of them were. AJ Ratliff, 2004. Greg Oden, class of 2006. And class of 2007, who was also a freshman at the time, Eric Gordon. Started against him. I was a senior. He was a freshman. Knew he was a dog.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
that, yeah.
And just a side note, AJ Ratliff, by the way, that game came in late. I think he was in trouble. Came in late that game. Started the second quarter, left early in the third, had 29 points. He was very deserving of Mr. Basketball that year.
Anthony Pasley, too.
Anthony Pasley. You know what? I reached out to him one time, and I told him how much I appreciated being able to play against him. Like, man, and if you ever watch, sorry, I'm getting off track.
Nah, you're good. Ain't no
but
track.
If you ever watch and listen to Allen Iverson, I appreciate that dude so much. As a matter of fact, in high school, you remember, I modeled my whole look behind Allen Iverson.
I was going to ask you where the inspiration from the Braves came from, too.
Allen Iverson was my guy.
Iverson,
So cornrows, double XL clothes on 145, 50 pound frame. That was mainly because of him. But if you listen to him talk today, one of the greatest things about that man is just the humbleness that he displays. He'll talk about he'll talk about Kobe and give so many Jordan and so many other individuals who were in the league and during his time frame before and after, as if he was never there himself at all, killing people.
It's like, bro, don't you know who you are?
Yeah, don't you know who you are? And I don't amount to him or anybody, but what I've never been afraid to do, and as he is the example of, is share who I played against, share the appreciation of who I have for those individuals, and just openly express those things in love and in truth.
So that's going to take me somewhere else real quick, because it's one thing I noticed, like being out in Arizona, one thing I noticed and one thing that I embodied when I was younger, like I was a fan of my peers. You know, so like one thing I noticed out in Arizona is like all these young kids that I'm in the gym with, like they're all fans of each other, you know, like they're all following each other, like showing each other love. I don't think that was the same way when we were coming up in our generation. You know, can you speak on that? Like as far as the difference between our generation and then, you know, the generation now? Because it's like a lot of the guys I'm still playing with, like they still like got them little personal battles.
Right.
And it's like, I never had that in me. You know what I'm saying? I never had an ounce of that in me. Like,
I'm just going to get it, period.
Yeah. I'm not thinking about you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
so it's like,
it was just
but if I am, I'm like, it's loving. You know, it's like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you still do have that dog and that competitive nature in you. Like, you're not going to stop me from getting to where I want to go.
One thing I did notice, though, there's a part, like, there's an advantage that comes with taking things personal.
It does.
You know, and I didn't have that, you know, until like now I'm like able to like kind of use it as I want to, you know, but like I can definitely say that definitely probably influence how it's perceived, just my separation from like that ego, pride type vibe, you know.
I can definitely tell you that I've been able to internalize that dog and that extreme nature of just wanting to go at you and go at your head, because that's how I played. And I feel like a lot of that came from the football as well, because I was 100 miles an hour and I'd hit you straight head up, straight on, not back down from nothing. And so I took that and used it in various ways within the game of hoops as well. But yeah, so I was able to internalize that, but I was a kind human being on the floor, but you would never know that I'm coming at you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I operate.
But you know, a lot of people like surface level, so they only see the kindness, you know.
And they try to use it, but they don't know that I know how they're thinking. So I'm coming at them the same way they're coming at me. They might be verbalizing it, but I'm not. To go back on the appreciation piece, the reason why I wore number 10, Gordon Morgan, who was a senior when I was a freshman, Michael Gaines. Man, those are the guys. The reason why I wore number 10, but also the appreciation for the Herman Fowlers, the Joey Thatchers, the Jim Lindsays, the Donnie Bolins. Like, those are the guys that I came up. And it started with my dad taking me to the gym on Friday nights. And there was never a Friday night I knew that I was going to be there on the football field on Friday nights or on the basketball court in Memorial Gym on Friday nights because of that feeling that I couldn't let go of when my dad took me to the gym as a kid. I just had to be there. There was nothing that was going to stand in my way. Not nobody, not grades, not nothing. I was going to be there, period.
I remember them days,
Back to your question about the circuit. I'm extremely thankful again for being able to be a special part of the game the way that I was, because I did not run on the AAU circuits. I wasn't picked up by any special teams. I was thankful for a mentor, like Phil Cox, who said, Kokomo Group, we got a core group of individuals that we're going to travel around to limited locations. We're not traveling out of state. We're not traveling cross country. We're traveling to close local limited locations and states surrounding us. And we're going to play quality basketball. Outside of that, it was in the driveway with my friends and finding a place, Northwest Park or Foster Park, to develop my game and skills. And that afforded me an opportunity to be on the court on Friday nights and to be one of the higher percentage and more efficient shooters because I worked on my game too. More so than it was that somebody seeing me on a basketball court. It was me by myself. I remember on a couple of occasions, Coach Wade passed by the high school. I don't know if he had some business there. He passed me by the high school. You remember that basketball goal that was next to the football field? I was there by myself shooting there all the time. And so he knew the work that I was putting in by myself. And if anybody drove by my house, they knew that I was in my driveway shooting on my goal. I had the Terrence Stories over my house. I had the other Deshaun Hawkins and Darren Smiths. I was at their house playing hoops. And so I, if I can say this, I deserved to be there because I had a tremendous desire to develop my game and develop my skills and to play against people who would challenge me. And so don't ever back down from a challenge from anyone. Don't do it. Just go at it, man. Go at it.
You mentioned some names like some of the individuals who inspired you as you were younger. So that takes me back to when I was younger. I was at Northwestern. So when I was coming up, I was watching like Austin Parkinson, Dustin Smith, Nate Gibson, those guys. So I know when I moved into Kokomo, you know, definitely a big difference, you know, from being at Northwestern and moving into Kokomo. So those guys, like I heard all those names, but I really I didn't have the firsthand experience to like grow up around them or know their siblings or family.
Right.
You know, so when I moved, being kind of like an outsider moving into Kokomo, it was like being an athlete, you know, being a higher level athlete, like, you know, I could obviously look up to you and Tristan and Scooter and you guys, you know, but guys that were like older than us, like I didn't really have any examples or know any of those people, you know? So like a lot of my inspiration and a lot of like what kind of kept me on the right track, you know, was like learning from the stories of the people who could have went and done this or should have went and done this, you know? So those was like, that's the stories I always got, was like, this person could have did this, or he could have did this, or she could have did that, you know? So not that like, it didn't really like motivate me, but it was like, I want to be different. You know what I'm saying? It was motivating.
Inspiration.
Yeah, it was inspiration. Yeah. So yeah, maybe share on that, you know, as far as like, you know, the generation maybe under you. Maybe you got that too, to where like you learned how to move more so based on like people moving in the wrong and behaving in the wrong.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think you're speaking to something. I just feel like you're speaking to something that has a greater message to it.
Basically, like I had great examples, but like for me personally, like I never had an example of me.
Yeah.
You know, so
what you did was you took the story and you exceeded the story.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody, brother, who has.
But I never had like a blueprint or nothing. Like I never had an example, really. Like
no, and I know Kokomo basketball enough to know that the extent of your career, nobody's matched it in basketball. And I'm just being honest about that. With the exception of Jimmy Rail, who went on, I think, to play for the Pacers, and Goose Ligon, who was who played in the ABA, I believe, and had an opportunity. But what I'm hearing in my head, and I can only answer it based on what I'm hearing. Is that
you feel me?
Absolutely. Is that there has to be a greater effort for individuals like yourself, and I'm not saying that you're not doing this, you are doing this. There has to be a greater effort for people who have had an inspiration, who have gone on to do tremendous things in their lives, to come back and be the example. Because for you, you're saying that you didn't have the visual example that I had. I was in the arena and I seen those guys do what they did. And I know because of what they did, I wanted to try to do the same thing myself. And there was nothing that was going to keep me from being on the floor myself on Friday nights. You just had the story and you exceeded the story. Now, today's generation, it's hard for them because individuals are not watching the game the same way. And I stress that a lot to my son. I said, son, if you want to go and do great things, you have to be an observer of the game, and you have to sit down and watch it. And so it correlates with, in my head, the arenas aren't full the way that they were when I was a kid. Now, people can blame that on class basketball, and I believe that has something to do with it. But I believe that the family dynamic and a lot of things come into play, technology, gaming, etc. The family dynamic has to take a step back and look at the situation and say, this is what is hindering us from being able to advance in certain areas of our lives. If it's a basketball player, I know that I should need to be taking my son to the Kokomo basketball games on Friday nights if this is something that they aspire to be. Is that making sense?
Yep.
I hope that's answering your question. But if there's a message in this at all, it's to parents. And I'm not coming down on you. I'm just simply making an observation and conveying a message. is if you know that you have a son or a daughter that wants to be a good basketball player, take them to the games on Friday nights. Take them to watch the game. Point out, even if you don't know the game at an extensive level, make sure that you point out certain things and say, hey, you see that move right there? You know that you can try that move yourself when we get home. And that's what I used to do. I used to watch Herman Fowler and Donnie Bowling. And I used to go home after the game on my little tight go. My dad could tell you the stories. And I used to run like Donnie Bowling. And I used to try to shoot the ball like Herman Fowler on my little tight go. And eventually what that turned into was being able to have a career and become a starting shooting guard at 5'7", 145 pounds within a competitive high school basketball environment. And so I just encourage you to take on that mentality and that mindset that if there's something that you want, to go and get it. And
just a level of seriousness.
A level of seriousness.
And that's one thing like that I remember, you know, just when I moved into Kokomo, just how you kind of practice and carried yourself, just didn't say much. You would just very locked in, you know, very sharp. So yeah, that's what's up.
And I felt that I had to be that. I'll say.
Would you say that's your general leadership style, like by example?
Yeah.
And now you maybe starting to be more vocal? Or
I am just now coming into that.
Yeah.
And it's an acquired thing because I am not my dad. I am not my dad. I've acquired it in the sense that I've been around him so much in coaching settings and in just so many different various ways. He's an extrovert. I'm more of an introvert. I've seen him go up to people and just start talking to them. He doesn't know a stranger. I've seen him be who he is within these certain arenas. And I've said, if I want to make an impact, I have to know how to be able to do that. And so now it's becoming more of a natural thing where I can walk into a room and I'll just start talking to people and I don't even know why, because it's not my immediate nature, but because it's something that I've seen visually for so long, I'm able to do that and create relationships. So, but back to the question in reference to the seriousness of yes, that is me. I'm quiet. I'm very serious about what I do. I want to be great at everything that I do. So I pursue it and I attack it in a manner as such. And I'm thankful to know that comes across, but I'm also thankful to know that not thankful to know. I want you to know where that comes from. I've somewhat had this complex, and I'm just being transparent and I'm sharing my heart with you. I've somewhat had this complex throughout my life about how I've had to pursue certain things based on my size, especially within the arena of sports. Basketball, for example, and football, but basketball, for example, I'm 5'7", 145 pounds. Where do I fit in? Okay, I found a way to fit in, and that's with my jump shot. I have to work extremely hard at that. But it has to go beyond just having a jump shot. I can't miss school. I can't miss class. At least what I remember of high school, my junior and senior year, even if I was sick or didn't feel well, and being a 3-sport athlete, this had to be a mind frame all year long. Even if I was sick or didn't feel well, I was at the very least getting up late, mustering up the energy to put on my clothes and go to school, even if it was late, just so I could be at practice. You want to know why? So that nobody could creep into my starting position. That was always my thought, because I just couldn't let it happen, man. I had attained something, and whether that was really the truth or not, I had to, for myself, be there and let the coach know that even though I'm sick, I have to be there, and I'm going to be there, because I'm not letting JoJo come into my starting spot or even get the opportunity to practice there for a minute, because I got to have it. I got to keep it. There's just something in my nature. I have to be there. And so, developing that type of tenacity behind my actions is kind of what I'm building from, and trying to be an example of to other people, like my kids. So as you started getting involved, like more in the community, what was like your first event? Like, what was that experience like? As far as from a coaching standpoint?
Just being a community leader.
Gotcha. Well, first and foremost, it starts with my dad being a great example.
Yep.
As far back as I can remember, he has been engaging young people in a special way, and being a leader as a head coach of PAL football, and then stepping into various places, always been active with youth. And I don't think it goes two ways for me. I think that's very much an acquired thing based on what I've seen him do, but it's also a natural thing because although I'm more of an introvert and shy and quiet in my nature, I could be doing this all day long. And this is genuine. The interaction that I'm having and then with the expression that I'm having, this is genuine. I can go to work, conversate with people all day long and be genuine. I can coach, be loud and do that and be genuine. And I can go home, sit on my couch and be quiet the rest of the night. I'm not going to do that because I have kids, I have a wife. But if it was just me, I would be completely fine with it being just me. Getting away from the question just a little bit. But, so having the example, having a desire to impact the lives of young people. What's very helpful in being able to do that is being able to operate within my area of expertise. And I try to stick with just shooting the basketball because I feel like having been able to shoot the basketball pretty well myself, I can show somebody else how to do that. And that's an opportunity to engage with young people and be impactful. From a professional standpoint, just continuing to move into spaces where I'm so happy that I had a conversation with somebody recently about this. They said, why would you, it wasn't in an attacking manner, for lack of better terms. It was a genuine question. They said, why would you leave IU Kokomo? You were making such a tremendous impact there. Why would you take a step back from your personal training to pursue the Carver executive director position? And I had realized when they asked me that question that I was looking at each of these spaces, not so much the personal training in basketball, but I was looking at each of these spaces as jobs. And what I had come to realize when I took 2 weeks to consider becoming the executive director of Carver Center. And during that 2 weeks, I started to realize that it's a calling and it's not a job. Impacting the lives of young people is something that I can't escape even if I wanted to. And so it just depends on, it's up to me what space I want to do that in. Well, with IU Kokomo, from the seat I was sitting in, I could only do it for this group of people. This number, such and such number of people, day to day, that I was going to be able to talk to and impact. Beautiful. Such and such number of people I was going to be able to train within this time frame on such and such days a week.
Kind of
Limiting, but still impactful.
For sure. But your vision is enormous, though.
Yeah. So when I started thinking about this executive director position, now it turns into hundreds of people at one time, potentially hundreds of people at one time.
And like the possibility of that growth.
Yes. And it was something that excited me a tremendous amount, and that when I started seeing it more as a calling and just how the Lord will graduate you in trying the very best you can to be obedient to his word, will graduate you to certain levels. And I'm just so thankful to be where I'm at today, because I can still see it. It's in process of coming into fruition. I can see that a great number of individuals and young people and families too are going to be impacted by the Carver Center.
No doubt at all. Would you have any perspective, encouragement, advice for people who are between that space you were in, as far as like between a job and a career, or job and calling?
Yeah.
You know, like between like making that jump, you know, whether it's from doing something you're not, you know, maybe content with, not happy, not satisfied, or, you know, taking the leap and doing something that you're passionate about with purpose, with meaning. What would you share with those individuals?
It is a leap of faith. It is a leap of faith. And if you're going into the situation thinking about all the things that could go wrong, you might not ever pursue it at all, ever. And that's not how we should be living our lives. First and foremost, and again, it stems from my relationship with the Lord. First and foremost, I do the very best I can to allow the Spirit to lead. And when you allow the Spirit to lead, he's gonna speak in these still, quiet voices, and he's gonna prompt you, and he's going to have your discernment on full display on what's good for you, what's not good for you, what fits within the space, and what doesn't. He's going to tell you when to act, when to engage with such and such person, or when to let it go. And I'm finding that more and more in my day to day, that it is, if when I know that I don't have to rely on me to be successful at the things that I'm doing, then I actually am more successful at what I'm doing, if that makes sense. Because I don't have to rely on myself to be great.
So where's that faith come from? You know, like a lot of people I've learned, like, you know, you either have faith or you don't, pretty much, you know? So it's like, what's that line between like having it and not, you know? Because that all sounds like you're able to allow and listen and that, but like, do you got faith to really be open to listen and receive and just kind of flow? Or, you know, that's a thin line that I've learned, you know?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great question. Can you reframe that for me? I feel
there's
like
a lot of like allowing, you know, like allowing this to happen, kind of like being open just to receive the Spirit and receive and just, so like, you know, a lot of people, you know, cling and resist, you know, so how do you just stay present in the moment and just, you know, because really it's like, comes down to being in the moment, you know, so like, how have you found yourself in the moment, able to just really embody faith, the spirit of faith, and not the word of faith?
It's very good. Very good question. I think first, you know, I truly feel like, and the word talks about this, and I don't do a good job of saying word for word verbatim, but I absolutely could tell you that where it is and find it quickly if I had the word. But the word talks about how the Father leads you into the relationship. And I think we know, and I think that our faith is counted when there's an acknowledgement of the Lord at all. And what I mean by that is, excuse me. What I mean by that is that it is absolutely evident that you can begin to operate in the Spirit when there's been so much evidence of it in your life. For example, here's a question to you that kind of helps me with my answer. When some of the things that you've been able to achieve in your lifetime, and some of the places that you've been able to travel and to share with the world, and some of the relationships that you've developed, you can probably look around you and say, man, that person over there has not been able to experience a lot of the things that I've been able to experience. It's not because me as a person is any different than that person over there, but it might have something to do with the relationship that you have, the spiritual aspects that you have obtained. Is there anything that you can share that would speak to how you feel like and why you feel like there's a difference in how your life has gone versus others? Now, I do not belittle the fact that life circumstances play a role in what some people are able to experience. My mother, for example, was dirt poor. I did not come up dirt poor. she worked to provide for me opportunities that she didn't have. So I understand that piece. But from a faith standpoint, I have to be able to convey a message of, this is why certain aspects of my life look different because of the relationship that I have with the Lord.
I would say, for me, like, as I got a little older, got some experience, and then began to reflect back, for me personally and just my experience, like, I realized I've always had the Spirit in me. You know, we all do, but like, I've really embodied it, like, meaningfully ever since I came out of my mother. And I say that to speak a little bit on my family. You know, my mom comes from a one-night stand where my grandmother was kind of separated from the family due to having a child out of wedlock. My mom had me, obviously, with a black man. My grandmother told my mom that she would never love me or never hold me. So that's where my family kind of comes from. So then when my mom has me, my grandmother, she couldn't keep her hands off me. You know, so I've changed those patterns in our society and in our world and in my family, like, from the jump. You know, so I have meaning, like, from the very first moments I was held. So as I reflected and kind of put my family story together, it's like, that's why I've been able to settle even more into the Spirit and have more faith, or not more faith, just faith, you know, and just really be in the moment, you know. So just having that meaning from a kid, and then starting sports early, having those outlets to express myself, having the dynamics of my household. My dad and my parents allowed me to cry, you know, after games, you know, which I always encourage parents, like, that might be the greatest thing they ever did for me, is just to allow me to cry and just be passionate after my games and loss, and, you know, be frustrated and just really express myself, you know, because then I got older and I was able to express myself kind of every step of the way, you know. So for me, it's like, I had the Spirit from before I even knew it. I lived like within my destiny to this very moment, you know. Just, I couldn't have asked for a better life, you know, and I've been through so much that I've had to persevere through. So it's like, I've kind of got like the whole experience to where now it's like, my faith is unwavering. I'm in the moment, you know, and I'm just trying to help and serve immediate engagements at a time, you know, not really looking like I got to do this, or I got to put this together. It's just like, if I could walk out of here and walk over to the store and, you know, pick up something that dropped for someone, like, I look at that as like, you know, planning a TBT organization. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, for me, it's just, I've had so much meaning, so much purpose. I've been in my destiny. So it's just like a full flow now. Now it's like, I'm damn near just like, I'm watching too, you know, and I'm sure you can relate.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how that relates to my story.
Man, that's sweet, man.
That's sweet. Appreciate it. Thanks for letting me share. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely.
Couple more things, just to kind of stay, because we've both been involved in the community here. Had a lot of relationships, done a lot of good work, learned a lot, you know, still learning a lot. So I just want to know, like, what's some things around, like, what's some tough parts about being in the positions that you're in, as far as like being a leader in the community? It's all meaningful, so tough is relative, because I'm sure, like, we learn from those situations, but like, what's some experiences that you know are tougher?
No, and you can relate to this so much, being the figure that you are, is that, and this is something that I'm teaching my son now. He's 10, about to be 11. That eyes are always on you. And you have to understand that if you're particularly good at a thing, and even if you're not, but if you're particularly good at a thing, and it gives reason for people to watch you do it, they're not only watching you in that arena, within that arena, they're watching you outside of that arena as well. So your day-to-day life, when somebody sees you at the grocery store, when somebody sees you at the mall, if you're out to eat somewhere, you have to know that people are taking note of your character, and your behavior, and how you just present yourself in your demeanor. That's why you should be doing the very best you can to treat people with love and kindness and gentleness, and just embrace it, because there's likely never going to be a chance for you where you're not going to have to do that. Because somebody just walked into the Carver Community Center the other day and they said, oh, and by the way, what's your name? And I said, JC Barnett. And I said, oh, you the Kokomo basketball guy. It's been 20 years. This is my 20th reunion this year. And I had done nothing beyond high school basketball. I'm not a Brandon Wood. But they remember who I was from then. So it means something. And kids, it means something how you carry yourself now, because you're still young enough, for many of you out there, you're still young enough that you're going to want to give yourself still an opportunity to do some great things. But for those of you, I'm talking to older crowd too, for those of you who have done great things in your life, somebody remembers who you are. And you still have an opportunity to create and generate impact in the lives of people who are even older than you, because this gentleman was older than me. And they obviously remember some things that I did on the basketball court. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said it. And so understanding that that everything that you do, you have eyes on you, that you're being watched, not from a scary or creepy sense, but just from the sense that people are always looking for somebody to give them some sense of inspiration that allows them to go out and act and do a thing for themselves. And a lot of people who find themselves difficult. Everybody can't hoop. Everybody can't play football. And if you are able to do that at any level, somebody admires that about you, because they may not have necessarily been able to do that themselves. And so when a person observes you in that way and in that manner, take that to heart and embrace that, and perform at your best ability, not only on the football field or on the basketball court or any arena of sport, but perform the best you can in character as well, because that means just as much, if not more. And that's what I'm trying to teach my son.
Nice. So you're a married man, you know, in love. So I want to get your thoughts on love and marriage, and you know, just your thoughts on, you know, what is love to you and what is love between you and your wife.
Honey, I love you. You know this journey, and I would love to ask you a question about yours as well. Me and my wife this year in December, it'll be 11 years. And it has been a beautiful road, and it has been a tough road. And what we found early on is me and my wife, actually, we are polar opposites in so many ways. If she's hot, I'm cold. If she's cold, I'm hot. And that's in several different ways, but that's in physical too. Like my wife had the air on at 68 the other day. I'm like, honey, I should be able to walk around the house comfortably in shorts and a t-shirt, right? A moderate temperature. She'll laugh at that. But I love my wife so much, and I'm going to be extremely honest about that. It's a kind of an emotional conversation too, because I don't know if she knows. I've said this to my son, actually, because he played a role in this. But when I met my wife, she had already had a son from a previous relationship. And so I wanted to pursue her. I knew that I wanted to pursue her. But she actually saved my life. And I say that because we got married at 28, and we met and developed a relationship at the age of when I was 27. She's a few years younger. Actually, she was the year that you graduated high school. So she saved my life because I was in the world doing some silly things. And not to go into too much detail about that, but I was in the world doing some silly things. I've always been a faith a man of faith and believed to be a man of God. But at that particular time in my life, I was not acting like it. And so when she came along, I've always been transparent and open book, and she kind of knew this about me. But she saved my life, because otherwise, if we hadn't conceived my son, I might, for however much longer, might have still been in the world doing silly things. And so I'm extremely thankful for having met her and have coming into a relationship with her. And when we got married, it seemed like the Lord had ordered all of that for me, because first and foremost, not to get too vulgar, but first and foremost, it is only by the grace of God that I hadn't had a child before her. And this is new information for a number of different audiences, including my parents. But I have to be real in this space. And so, but I conceived with her. And my son came along, and he was born, and he became JC the fourth. And we got married and developed a family from there. He was 4 months old when we got married. We got married in my parents' home in front of their fireplace. It was a beautiful, small setting ceremony with close friends and family. And just so thankful for my wife and for our life now together. And so now it's been 11 years. That journey has been tough. Again, we're polar opposites. And everything ain't always going to be sunshine and rainbows anyway. That's regardless of whether you marry your best friend or you marry somebody that, however the relationship looks like, it's never going to be just sweet. And so I'm super thankful, extremely thankful that that me and her both love the Lord the way that we do, because you know, otherwise the relationship would look very different. And that's really the extent of what I'll say about that. But if not relationship for the Lord and us having a knowledge and an understanding of how different that we are, and learning how to work around each other and loving each other through each other's faults, it's just been a beautiful journey. So nice. Super thankful for that. I very much remember you and your wife when she was living, and I seen a love and a passion between you two that is different than, and I'm being extremely honest and genuine here, than what I've ever seen between two people your age. Now, I'm not saying that love isn't out there and that it hasn't been close around me, but the love that you showed and that you displayed between the two of you in person and on the platforms has just been different, seriously, even to this day, than I have ever seen before. Where does that love stem from? What did the relationship look like leading up to you being married? And how did you sustain that with each other? Because it was passion. It was passionate.
That's a great question. I mean, I don't think either one of us like thought so far ahead to think like we would fall in love with someone, you know? You know, but it was like one of those situations where it was like love at first sight. I seen her, you know, and then before the night we were connected, and, you know, we were pretty much together ever since then. I would say, like, similar to you two, it was like a lot of us as individuals are like opposites, you know, just stemming from how we were raised and just who we are as individuals. But I think what we had in common was just our passion to like serve, you know, and to like, she was a caregiver, you know, so now as I've like thought about that term and like that label of like a caregiver, it's like, that's what we had in common. We both just cared. You know, so like we were just like in full service mode, like trying to help as many or whoever we could, whoever crossed our path. And then just like having the time away from everything we've ever known to ourselves. You know, we were kind of like traveling as nomads for like a decade, you know, so we were pretty much on our own all over the world, having to adjust and live and just adapt to different cultures. And through that journey, we just like little by little continue to learn about ourselves as individuals, and then as one, it started coming closer as one, when like it formed like a spiritual relationship then, and then it's like, now it's like a full spiritual experience, so I'm thankful to, for the whole journey, because like each piece kind of sets you up for each level of evolving. But yeah, I believe just like where we were, like as far as our individual journey, our journey as one, just the intensity of our approach and like understanding ourselves and our family and healing and just kind of understanding this experience, it was so intense to where it was like we were just so present, we had so many new experience after new experience after new experience. So it was like every day was like a new life, so we were like kind of reborn every day and like restarted every day. And then it comes to like our like routines of like kind of keeping ourselves grounded, keeping ourselves mindful. Those routines were so quality and intense. It was just like, it's hard to articulate without probably like sounding full of it. But it was like, it was everything that you shared, it was everything that I would hope everybody would get to experience, so
even if it's for a short time.
Even if it's for a short time, but that's the importance of like being in the moment, that short time is like, it's a lot of moments in a short time, but like you said, like, it only became to that point through the tough times, and her, having space for me to develop as a man, me having space for her to develop as a woman, not making it all about ourselves. We do at certain points, but then it gets to a point where it's like, it's not about me anymore, it's about you, so that's like, once you hit those points, then it starts to like become more like of a spiritual relationship, I feel. So it was, and it wasn't really, and it was like, I can kind of speak on it as an individual and for us as one. It was like, we kind of like both had that spirit too, because she like from the deep South, she was groomed like through that Southern hospitality.
So I had no idea. Where from the South?
She's from Linden, Alabama.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so deep South. So so we kind of like both had that spirit in us. I think just through our journey, it kind of brought it out of us. And then like once we became together, it was just like, and it was just special, and it gets even special, by the day to this day. So, I appreciate you asking.
That's powerful, man.
Yep. One question, just to wrap it up, if you don't mind sharing, because I am in a new space myself, and you had an experience that may not only relate to myself, but other people, but you shared as far as like your wife had a kid previously before you got together. How was that as far as like finding yourself with a woman who has a kid?
And this is not speaking directly about myself, but this is for any man or any woman who is engaging in a relationship with somebody who has a child from a previous relationship. It takes a special person, and it takes a special perspective of that child has no say-so in coming into the world, first and foremost, and has no say-so in what the relationship between their parents looks like. They are simply what they are. They're a child. I met him when he was 4. And that child deserves every bit of love and a household of, he deserves every bit of love and a household that shows examples of love as much as possible. And all I was present for him for was, I already knew that he had a dad. And so, a present dad. And so, with that, I just wanted to be sure that I was there as an example of love, a support system for him, and, helped him from stepdad point of view, to grow up and to see life and to give him certain perspectives that I knew what he would benefit from. And so it's not hard for me, a person who prides himself in a relationship with the Lord, to keep that perspective first and foremost. And it helps a tremendous amount, because still to this day, he just turned 16. Still to this day, we have a great relationship. And it starts with not being resentful of the fact that he came from another man, not holding anything against my wife or my love, or for having had a child with another man. And believe it or not, there are people who engage relationships with people who have had children before and not having children of their own, who will be resentful of those things. Now, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me that you would even engage at all with somebody who had a child from a previous relationship, if that's the way that you're going to act. And so, you know, I knew that I was going to love him as my own. Always have, always will. I give him perspective. I give it to him real and straight and direct. And I feel like the very interesting thing is, from the age of 4 to 16 is the dynamic of the relationship. Is because he grows, he goes back and forth between households. I'm being super transparent here. He has always gone between households. And so you get different perspectives within certain spaces. And sometimes you have to be reminded of, hey, this household operates differently. And so I'm thankful that he is the young man who he is. He's an awesome kid. And I'm thankful that he has always been receptive to what I've said to him, and that there's never been really much of an issue there as far as me having to get on him or anything. But very respectful young man. But I would say that's probably been the most challenging thing. And it comes from situation to situation. I've been tremendously blessed with a kid who has just been great. We've had challenges in various aspects, and we've addressed them. We give perspective, and then we move on and continue to show love. But the one thing that I encourage you to do is come in first and foremost with a heart of love towards the child. 2, develop very early on an understanding between you and your love, what kind of relationship and what degree you're going to be able to discipline the child. I was given the authority to discipline to a greater extent than what somebody else might. But it also, I feel like, developed early on a foundation for how our relationship was going to be from that point till now. And it's strong. And so I feel like the person who's coming in the relationship with the child needs some perspective on, especially if the child's father or mother isn't in the picture, that there should be given more leeway to the person who's coming into their life to be able to impact their life, because obviously there's not that figure there. But if the figure is present within their life, I think there should still be a strong presence. There should still be a strong sense of discipline there from that other individual, because while they're away from their biological, there still has to be that there for them. And so it's been my dad also, again, the power of seeing examples. My dad took on the responsibility of my 2 sisters. My mother came into a relationship with my dad with 2 daughters before they had me together. He always saw them as their own. They are his daughters. They're his girls. And, you know, regardless of the fact if whether the kid wants to call you stepdad or call you by your first name, that's completely fine. That young man is always going to be my son, and I treat him as such. And so you couldn't tell me any different.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Real quick before we wrap it up, I know you got things going on tonight in the community. You know, you got always things going on by the week. So maybe share everything you got going on and how people can support you.
Absolutely. As executive director of the Carver Community Center, I want people to understand that, you know, that institution is a place that very much is still going to be an arena of sports. And primarily people know Carver Community Center as the mecca of basketball in this area. And it will still be very heavily involved with basketball, but we are going to lead in the area of education. So we're developing so many educational pieces, and everything else, as well as basketball, is going to be a byproduct of the successes that we have in the educational areas. We've done some tremendous things this summer. Cheryl Simmons, the director of the Closing the Gap program, is an education program that works with kids kindergarten through grade 5. We have 50 kids involved in the first portion of that program in June. There'll be a second portion July, early couple weeks of July, which will have the same 50 kids involved with it as well. So just a powerful education program. We have a couple of other things that I won't mention just yet that are going to bring some educational pieces to the community, but we are going to fill that place, and we're going to be bursting at the seams with educational opportunities. Also Bridges Outreach, they come in and they do Bible study as well as activity with kids from 12 to 3 every day. And it's just an incredible opportunity to have kids in the space and utilizing the space for great causes. And that's how we want to continue to engage kids, engage youth. Our mission, the first part of our mission, is we are impacting the lives of youth and their families. I want people too to understand that the child doesn't grow strong if the head of the household isn't strong. And so our focus is just as great on the family unit and the parents just as much as the child also. So be on the lookout for opportunities for parents to be involved and active at the Carver Center as well. Programming will focus on you as well. But yeah, Kokomo Carver, KOKOMOCARVER @gmail.com is where you can email us at. You can call us at 765-457-9318. Please feel free to call us anytime to get some information on what programming, or if you're interested in a particular thing. Even if it's not a thing now, that doesn't mean that it can't be a thing tomorrow. And so appreciate every opportunity to speak with you and to continue to grow and develop the Carver Center into something that we can be proud of in the community.
Yep. Appreciate you, bro.
Thank you.
With that being said, this wraps up the 4th episode of this season of Inside the Neighborhood. Again, my name is Brandon Wood. Shout out to my special guest, JC Barnett.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you, bro. Love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
you.
Yes, sir.